Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the iWorkinSport live interview. This is the show where we talk to accomplished sport business professionals who come here to share their knowledge, their experience, tips, and advice in order to help you succeed in your career. If we're just meeting, my name is João Frigerio. I'm the founder of iWorkinSport, and I want to thank you for being here with us today. Let me know if this is your first time or if you're coming back. Comments where you're watching from, right? Also, if you're now watching the replay, if you're not watching this live, also leave a comment there for us. We check all of them. If you don't know, I work in sport very quickly. We're a platform to help you accelerate your career in sport. We do that mainly through events. So we organize job fairs in case you're looking for a job, or as was the case of a few weeks ago, we have an education expo where you can also meet programs, masters in sport, if you're interested in investing in your education. If you're watching this on YouTube or on LinkedIn, but we're also on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So you can find us everywhere as iWorkinSport, and on LinkedIn as well. We have a community called We Work in Sport with many other people with the same interests or similar interests that you have in sport. So join, it's great, and let's interact there too. Now, to my guests today I have the pleasure to talk to Sarah Lewis, one of the most influential women in sports of the past at least 2 decades. She's been a top-level athlete representing Great Britain in the Alpine Ski World Championships, as well as the Olympic Games. I think it was in Calgary, not 98, in 88. Then she made a transition from athlete to sports manager. She will tell us more about that, but I can tell you that for some 20 years she served as the Secretary General of the International Ski Federation. So she now has new plans. We're going to talk about that too, but we certainly have a lot to learn from her experience. So it is my pleasure to invite Sarah to join me right after this. Hi, Sarah. Press the button there twice, but this is live, so these things happen. Thank you so much for being here with us today. How are you?
My pleasure. Pleasure to be with you. It's great.
Great. Where are you at the moment?
I'm in my home office in Solothurn, in Switzerland, and having just returned from a couple of months, from 2 months, a little bit more in China, preparing for the Olympic Winter Games, which begin in 78 days.
Cool. Yes, we're definitely going to talk about that. Just before we start, I always like to give a shout out to people watching us. We have Tekla Simonia from Georgia. Hello, Tekla. Thank you for being with us. There is Renata. I know that she must be here in Lausanne as well. There's Otello James from Dakar, Senegal. Thanks for being here. Also, Regina in Brazil. Thank you for tuning in. Everyone else watching, if you want to let us know where you're watching from, that would be great. Sarah, so let's start. This is a career show, right? It's focused in career. We want to learn from your experience. And so I think there's no better way to start than if you could give us a summary of your career in sport, please.
Sure. I don't see it as a blueprint for everybody else, and I certainly see that I've had a privileged opportunity to become involved in sport. And I think really the main question that you wanted to raise is particularly focused on a career in sport is the transition from athlete to sports administrator. My career was as an alpine skier, as you mentioned. As a youngster, I did all sorts of sports. I did every possible sport that I could do. I came from the outskirts of London on the north side. As a kid, I played football. There wasn't organised football for girls back then. So 14, that meant I had to make a choice between football and skiing. And I was already doing gymnastics. That was at a level representing my school. I was doing judo, playing table tennis, basically whatever was possible I did. But the level where I got best was in skiing. And that was pretty unusual back then, to be a youngster coming from London, which is obviously not renowned for skiing or for having facilities. But then I did competition training on a dry ski slope. Now there are a great number of snow domes, snow facilities throughout the country, which wasn't the case back then. As far as then transitioning from an athlete to a sports administrator, would you like to move on to that now?
Yeah, please. Let me know. How
Right.
was that? Because you had a very successful career, as I said, as I mentioned, competing in World Championship and Olympic Games. So yeah, quite high level. Oh, by the way, I noticed that. Am I right that you retired just what 1 year after the Olympics? So you reached that high level. You didn't feel like competing a bit longer. How was that? It's always hard to stop as an athlete, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's easier just to continue. And frankly, the main reason that I stopped was really suffering a lot of discomfort from sciatica, more or less permanent complaint. And then our team and our setup, we didn't have resources to really go into these things and how to deal with it in the best possible way. But there's a lot of discomfort. And frankly, I did have a lot of other things going on. And well, I was a certain age then, at that time, being 25, that it's well, 24 going 25.
That's super young.
Yeah, well, nowadays it's very, very different. But then, you certainly weren't earning it wasn't your professional career. There was no prize money at that time, and the contracts from the ski manufacturers and the different companies were for the leading athletes. I wasn't in that class, but I did earn my own living. And that's what I wanted to explain to you about the transition, actually, because I was involved within sports organization and administration during my career. So I decided that I wanted to ask my parents if I could ski full time. There wasn't the structure with ski academies and well, being able to be educated online parallel to your sport
Right.
back then in the early 80s, 1980, when I finished my formal education in London.
Right.
I then asked my parents if I could go to a ski academy abroad. And they supported that. They were both lawyers, solicitors actually. And I achieved the examination both at Ski Academy in Austria and in France. Ultimately, in Austria, they decided that they weren't going to take any foreigners for that particular intake. So after setting my sights on it, I ended up going to school in France. Finally, only then for 6 months. because I was then invited to become a member of the British junior national team at that juncture. And it was a case of, if you want to compete internationally, then you need to be part of our team program. So I returned to become part of that program, but I said to my parents that I wanted actually to fend for myself and to get involved from a working standpoint between the training camps and the competition periods. So that's what I did. I went to the local ski shop, who I knew had just taken on a role as being ski equipment importers from abroad, rather close to where we lived, maybe 5 kilometers away. And they said, you'd be the perfect trainee. There were 2 directors and me. So I had the most marvelous, formal, informal education, both within the sports industry, the ski industry, the winter sports industry, and business.
Right.
And I was doing everything from answering the phone to sending telexes to doing the accounting to unloading trucks that were coming in with the goods we'd imported, to preparing orders, to taking care of the showroom, to repairing skis. We had a ski equipment.
That was when?
This was from 1980 right through my entire career up until 1988, including changing premises to quite a bit further away. But it was very important to me, and my role changed from being more time working and then going to training camps. It was the junior team after all, to then transitioning into becoming more or less full-time with training and with training camps, and then working in between those, which was rather more sporadic. And I had then rather more of a responsible, representative, promotional position at that time. And I was also taking care of my own sponsorship, finding sponsors, taking care of them, and doing jobs for them. So, as it were, I was already involved. And then also on the voluntary side, I had taken on the role as a volunteer, as the volunteer international manager for the English junior squad. So that's more like a regional representational team, and that was my first representational team. So I'd done that transition before I'd entered my career, so it was rather natural.
So basically, when you stopped competing, you kind of continued what you were already doing. Was that it?
That's exactly what I did. You know, I effectively set up a small company, which I called Consultancy, and I worked for my previous trainee importing company. I did projects then for the different sponsors I've been involved with, and I then became the professional public relations consultant for the English Ski Council, and all of the English governing body for the sport, amongst a few other things. And that then transitioned into being offered the position as the first professional Alpine Director for the British Ski Federation. They had just been set up on instructions of effectively the Ministry of Sport. It had been a volunteer organisation until then. And then when they transitioned to become professional, they approached me about doing that. And I then put everything in my car and went to Edinburgh. Took a little bit of convincing, because I was very much enjoying consultancy and all of the different projects. I also commentated for Eurosport during their second seasons from then onwards, which was very exciting and interesting to get involved with as well, and did quite a bit of media work as well. So I dropped all of that. I took over then full time. We set up effectively a professional structure for alpine skiing within Great Britain, and had some good successes. During 4 years, I then became integrated into the international scene as a member of the International Ski Federation. I was already nominated by Great Britain into 2 subcommittees for FIS. And
So
then
your first positions then with FIS was representing the British Ski Federation.
Well, yes, that's just a committee role,
Committee
effectively.
role.
And there are 800 plus committee members. So that really is attending 2 meetings a year and not too much else. But when I was on the circuit as the Alpine Director, I was serving at many competitions as the competition referee, so gaining experience, gaining knowledge, and becoming really integrated as an official from a technical standpoint.
Now that's very cool. Here in the show, we had several people with, of course, a very sort of different background. Like myself, I'm someone that wasn't in sport and came here to do a master's in sport. And that's how I started working in that area. And I have several friends in federations that are doing that. And sometimes a lot of people call me and want to ask for advice in terms of studies of what they need to do. And it's interesting to see as well. I always point that out, that actually starting from the bottom at the sport is a great way to build a career there as well. So you started, as you said, carrying boxes and being involved with the organization, doing both competing and very different way of how you climbed the positions. Before I want to talk about the gender element. We know that sports are very male-dominated environment. But even before that, so just to finish that part, how then you actually started as an employee, let's say, or staff of the International Ski Federation? How does that move take place? Oh, just before you do that, I just want to remind everyone there's already some more comments, so I'll mention that later. But if they want also to prepare questions, prepare them. You can participate in that conversation as well. Go on, Sarah. Sorry.
Yeah, well, basically, just to conclude that part, sorry, we didn't yet jump onto the gender question.
No, not yet. We're going to talk about the gender later. I'm just finishing because I think you came right up to the moment where you started to work with 50 member, but then you made the move where you went and became staff and then Secretary General. So that transition to FIS, how did that happen?
Yeah, well, as I was mentioning, because I was a member of 2 subcommittees, I was an active official on the circuit, that I had got to meet and to interact with key persons from FIS, the Secretary General, the committee chairs, and it was a rather small management team then. But when I saw that there was a position that had been approved, agreed within by the FIS Council to have a coordinator for the Alpine Skiing Continental Cups, I registered my interest with the Secretary General. He knew me, had seen me in action at World Championships, had heard from other officials, chairman of the Alpine Committee, chairman of subcommittee for rules and different persons, about the role that I've been playing at competitions and on the circuit. And basically the interview was, when would you like to start? So at the end of the 94 season, the season following the Lillehammer, the marvellous Lillehammer Olympic Winter Games, I joined as the coordinator for Alpine Skiing Continental Cup. So it was very much a process that I'd demonstrated my capacity over a number of years, over 4 years. They had met me and clearly felt that I was the right person for the position.
Oh, that's great. Let's talk. There's already a question here. Since I already mentioned the gender bit, let's address that, because I want to know if there was particularly challenging to make sort of the transition to work at the administration of sport, being a woman, and maybe you already wants to mention some of the challenges that you faced because of that.
Well, at the time, I personally didn't see it as unusual that I had extra hurdles to accomplish, because that was basically how it was across sport, and in fact many parts of society at large. And my mother, she'd had barriers when she wanted to become a solicitor, and also be a working mother. So that was kind of the accepted norm back then. And back then, I would respond to persons who asked about the challenges that I faced as a woman. Um, and my response was that basically I actually saw the advantages of being remembered, because I was unique. There were no other women around. But that comes with a certain pressure that I was well aware of, that I couldn't afford to make a mistake, because I knew very, very well that I would be assessed as, well, what do you expect from a woman? So today, of course, you can't possibly have such an attitude, but I didn't see it as anything unusual back then. And perhaps this was one of the pressures that led to me really wanting to be a perfectionist, and that I understood that I didn't have the same amount of chances as a man
Yeah.
who had a different kind of, there was a different level on which he was judged. So that's really, perhaps there was an unwritten, unhidden barrier, but the fact is that I was assessed, and I do respect this a lot. I was assessed on my capacity. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been given these positions. So I wasn't taken on board as the token woman, certainly, because that wasn't the norm back then. It wasn't necessary to be politically correct. It was necessary to have somebody who could do the job.
Yeah. Has that status quo changed considerably since when you started, or how do you compare the situation of gender imbalance? I was going to say balance, but probably should say imbalance between men and women now and then.
Well, I think it has changed. I think it has moved on. Uh, of course, everyone is very sensitive to it these days, and it's not yet a case, we haven't yet got to the case where we're gender blind, which is how we should be. And the person should be assessed on their qualities. And at the moment, there's still the requirement for additional assistance for women in order to really encourage them and support them. And I think that there is a lack of confidence that, well, I've got less of a chance because this isn't traditionally a woman's position, but that's changing.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that I played football with the boys from when I was really a small kid meant that I was integrated in that society. It was completely normal for me. I did judo with the boys. I just, I went to an all-girls school, so that, of course, was different. But nevertheless, I was very much didn't feel out of place, whichever gender I was with.
Well, and I have to say as well that it is changing also thanks to people like you that go and take a super high position in sports and deliver in a super competent way for some 20 years. So that's a very good testament for other women that are starting their careers now. So, Sarah, there are already some comments and questions arriving here from the audience, so would like to address that.
Sure.
First one, actually, Renata has one split in two, so I'm going to put that in the screen. She says, if you had not been an Olympian, but had only been a volunteer at the federation because you're a sports fan, for instance, carrying boxes, studies and passion for sport, do you think you would have had the same opportunities in sport, or the fact that you were an Olympian also helped you there? Just, I will continue so you can take these two. Similarly, would you hire a sport student that is not a skier per se?
Well, certainly, I believe very, very strongly that being an Olympian has given me many, many advantages and opportunities. You're part of an elite and special network, and I wear my OLI, my Olympians badge very, very proudly. So yes, I do think that that's the case. But basically, I see that as a crucial part of my qualifications and my education. Like someone else has a PhD, so I have my OLY. And nevertheless, it's about your passion, your commitment for what you're doing. And would I have hired a student who wasn't a skier to work for the International Ski Federation? Depends on the position. Certainly not in terms of a technical position that requires knowledge to build a course, to be able to assess the necessary dangers, and so on. But there are many, many positions that on the administrative side, on the marketing side, on the general organization, that absolutely the background is not essential, but there does need to be then a commitment to it, to really getting involved and an interest, and yeah. So I would say yes and no.
No, that's great. By the way, Renata also comments that that's a great pin.
Ah, I'm very proud of it. Very proud of it. Thank you.
Another one, and Yashpal here asks, I think he read my mind. My next question was going to be exactly about some career advice. So he says, according to you in your journey, how do you consider sports and advice for candidates who wants to pursue a career as a professional sports leader? So yeah, so basically, what advice would you give to anyone that would like to pursue similar career? And let's not consider, let's imagine that they are not an Olympian.
Good. Well, let's also perhaps give this a dual question, because you gave me an indicator of a question earlier, which is what advice you would give to women starting their careers in sport. So
Right.
the first answer applies to both genders, and this is important. So be yourself. You have been hired, you're being considered for your attributes and your qualities, and it isn't necessary for you to behave like someone else. As far as women are concerned, it's not necessary for you to behave like a man. It's necessary for you to demonstrate your capacity. What I would say is it's important that when you're setting out, that you demonstrate your interest, your passion for what you're applying for. It's not about what you can get out of it. It's about what can you contribute to the organization, how you can contribute, how you stand out, how you're different. And be inquisitive, look into the organization that you'd like to be considered to work for, where you're responding to their advertisement, or even if you're just making a cold call, and see what the values are of that organization. How can you align with those? What can you do to make a difference? So that, I think, is important advice. And get involved with volunteering, demonstrating that you want to be committed to this role. That, I think, is connecting very much to working for a sports organization. But even that can be the case within the industry, within tourism, within within sport education that try to go and find out and research and get connected to, not necessarily sign up for everything, but to get engaged.
Right, and this is for all of them, or just for a woman? There's anything in particular just for women, or it counts for both?
Look, I think both of that applies to everybody. And I'd just like to give a little bit of one particular comment on the women's side, which is that they say at Harvard Business School, there was an interesting article published, that women can apparently be liked or respected, but men can be both. So here's something where we have to change the narrative. If you are respected, you're often seen as a pushy woman, bossy, whereas for a man, that's authoritative, that's strong leadership. It's a different criteria that we're assessed on. So you've got to be sensitive to these things, and
Right.
I'd like to perhaps mention that.
Good point. Good point. Just before I jump to the other one, there just a shout out here to Otacílio, who's watching us in Brazil, and Rian is watching us in Italy as well. For anybody else that is watching us around the world, if you want to let us know where you're from or where you're watching from, that would be great. Yashpal is delighted with your answer, very proud of your achievements. And actually, to talk about that, what is it that you're most proud of in your career? Is it as an athlete or as an administrator? Can you separate that?
Well, I think I'll agree with Yashpal, becoming an Olympian, competing for Great Britain at the Calgary 1988 Olympic Games. And this is a youngster coming from the suburbs of North London. That for sure hadn't been the case before in alpine skiing. And so this was particularly a proud moment as an athlete. And as an administrator, I would say it's not one landmark moment, but I would like to add that to have had the opportunity to work professionally and to serve my own sport for 30 years and still counting in different capacities, including for 20 years in a leading role as Secretary General of the largest international winter sports federation, the International Ski Federation, FIS, and to be appointed as a member of several IOC commissions. So achieving, head table recognition through my work, which then also led to an honour by Her Majesty the Queen in 2018, receiving the Order of the British Empire, the OBE. This is the achievement I'm most proud of, serving the sport.
Great. So we talked first about a transition going from athlete to management in sport, or administration in sport. And we mentioned that you stayed for 20 years with FIS, the International Federation, and you left last year, 2020, right? And then also had a campaign. There was an election for a new president. You were one of the candidates. And now you're, we were not elected president, and now you're going to you're taking another step in your career. It's another, exactly, a step. You're doing something else. So I would like to know about that. How was that transition and exiting a place that you were for 20 years and now moving on to something very new? You already mentioned some exciting projects. You're working now, contributing the preparation for the Olympic Games in Beijing in just a few weeks, we can say. So maybe we can tell us about going from where you were to where you are now.
Thanks. Sure, I'd like to do that. Well, it wasn't planned or intended that I left FIS. back then, but this was the decision taken by the council, who really were effectively the body that decided that. I've moved on. I've dealt with it. It was certainly a decision that was unexpected and disappointing in many respects, because I didn't have the opportunity to implement the exciting opportunities that the organisation and the sport is ready and needs to embrace in order to be fit and relevant for today and the future. I'd like to say that I can only wish FIS, the leadership, the management, all the best to flourish in the future, and I will always be loyal to my sport. It's given me marvellous opportunities. And yes, I ran for the presidency. Clearly, my exit from FIS, to a certain respect, didn't assist that. And even though I wasn't elected, I am proud to have done so. I'm the first woman who ran for election for FIS, the FIS presidency, and indeed not too many international federations can boast women presidents, but I did it on my own, and gained a lot of lessons, and certainly looking forward to sharing those with the other women.
Any one in particular, any one lesson in particular that you would like to share?
Let me come back to that.
Okay, okay, for sure.
That I need to reflect on. So at the moment, what I've done since the election is then really to establish myself as a global sports leader, and the project that I've already mentioned is the focus at the moment, which is working with the Chinese Winter Sports Association and the Ministry of Sport in preparation for the Beijing 2022 Olympic Winter Games, opening in 78 days. And I'll be returning to China likely in early January after the conclusion of the qualification period, which is underway now. And I'm intending to go to Austria in a few minutes to support our teams with the World Cup there. So,
yes, we do have. We're going to stop this time. We're going to stop at the hour. I have to inform everyone that if you do have questions, now it's normally people leave it to a little later. So now is your chance, because we're going to have to stop this one at the 1 hour mark. But Sarah,
I've got a little bit of flexibility.
Okay, great.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
We'll see how that goes.
See how we're getting on. But then, as I say, after the games, then I very much hope, and it's also the intention in China, that I'll be involved supporting them with their exciting legacy plans, because this will be a game changer for winter sports. There are clear instructions from the president of China, Xi Jinping, that there will be 300 million new active participants in winter sport as a result of the Beijing 2022 Games. And from what I could observe and see, this is well on track. And the developments now, the number of resorts, the industry, the commitment to the sport, its integration within the schools and people's lives will make a big, big difference in China, but most especially internationally. And alongside that, I'll be looking into to some other different projects that I'm involved with innovation, with technology innovation. No question, this is a very exciting area. I was serving as lead mentor for Hype Sports Innovation for the first winter sport accelerator that's now going on, and the startups are very, very active at the moment.
Oh, that's very exciting.
It's exciting, but also alongside that, and coming back to our gender equality and campaigns, as a result of my experiences, not only with my campaign, but with other campaigns that I've seen, and with not only from women, I will certainly be opening the door as part of Sarah Lewis GSL, Global Sports Leader, to supporting and offering a service for other women who want to run for leadership positions, management, senior management positions within sport, and support them, advise them, and mentor them in order to be successful.
That's great. Is the plan then to start this advice practice in sports in general, or do you also plan to keep very tied to ski as a sport?
No, not at all. No, this will be sport in general very much. I had the opportunity through my connections within the IOC commissions, a member of the program commission, and with multiple coordination commissions, but also my role with Sport Accord as a member of the steering group, and very much involved in Sport Accord for 20 years, getting to know all of the different sports federations across the board. And so this has given me an invaluable network, summer, winter, Olympic, non-Olympic, and in fact, the reactions and the support that I received for my campaign across the international sports world was extremely widespread. And certainly I'll be connecting with the whole community.
That's great. There's more comments coming in. I'm just going to address a few of them at the moment, and I have a few other questions. So Angela, I think you may have connected a little later. So Angela from Portugal, what was the biggest difficulty you experienced in the sports industry, being a woman? We have addressed that topic. You can come back and watch the replay. Okay, there is Lynn from London, excited to learn from and about Sarah today. So am I, Lynn. Team Nico from Zambia saying hi as well. And there is Pia saying it's so valuable to have such a successful mentor for women in sport. Bravo. Thank you, Pia. And there's the Playnox, aka Taruka. Hi, Sarah. Is enough being done by corporate brands for women sports? Oh, is enough being done by corporates or brands for women's sports?
Personally, I think that they have taken this very, very seriously now. And there are a lot of corporates and a lot of brands who have made a great big focus area supporting women's sport. When you look at the big brands campaigns they're doing, and looking at the sports industry, they are very, very focused on it as well. The impression that, for example, women's football is making now, as it's becoming professional within the media, within the corporates who are sponsoring them, this has become absolutely a must. And many brands see themselves as not being taken seriously within sport unless they are supporting both.
That's right. Some other comment here from Mafi Toloi. Thank you, João and Sarah, for such a wonderful session. I'm Mafi from South Africa. Please, can you explain which departments you worked in and which skill sets you gained to strengthen your sports management career? Mafi, I think you also connected a little later. I'd recommend that you come back to the replay, because there is some more questions coming in. Unless Sarah would like to add anything to that question.
Well, what I would like to say is that I believe it's very, very important to learn by doing. As I said, volunteering, getting involved, and this for me was very much the best education I could have, was learning by doing. There wasn't the opportunities that there are these days with formal courses and education programs online, attending a conference online, and easy access to education to be able to benefit your skill set. I would like to make one comment about working internationally. This for me was an absolutely invaluable experience, and this is the thing I treasure most actually about working in international sport, is that I have learned to respect everybody's culture. Everybody's culture is absolutely interesting and fascinating, learning about the background. And it's not a case of saying, this is how we do things. You must come into our organization, to our federation, to our brand, our company, and do things in our corporate way. It's learning about how your culture works, the qualities that this brings, what that can do, and then gaining the trust and the benefits from it, and working together and saying, well, in other places I've been to, for example, this is a certain way to resolve that particular issue in Switzerland, or this is a way to handle it in Great Britain. Or WeChat, the Chinese communications platform, is just the best to use. This is how we resolve it in China. And so really it's a case of then not forcing yourself on your culture and your beliefs and how you do things on other people, but finding a common way.
Right, excellent. Sarah, there's been a wave of comments here to reacting to your post, your latest comments. Angela says, thank you. Shorty says, inspiration to women all over. Thank you. Taruka as well. Thank you. You're truly are an inspiration.
Well, we don't have to read out all of these.
No. Let's see. Well, listen. This is very interactive. The audience is almost, well, I would say as important as my guests, Sarah. So let me give them the floor. If they wrote it, Rachel.
Listen, what I would like to say though is that when I started out, I was a lone ranger, very much, both in skiing and in international sport. And one thing that I am particularly proud of, you asked what I'm most proud of, one thing I am particularly proud of is that when I finished as Secretary General of FIS, by then there are quite a number of Secretary Generals. And there had been at one time 3 Secretary Generals in the 7 international winter sport federations. And they'd been appointed, the other 2, on the basis of the fact that I had been respected for the work that I had done. And they then were targeting, actually, having women in those positions. And I know that that's true not only within winter sports, but other ones too. And so I feel that that's an important to demonstrate that we absolutely have the skill set and the qualities to do the job perhaps even better in our own way, or to certainly do it in a very, very good way.
There's a lot of people agreeing with you here. It doesn't stop. Mbelo says you're a living legend, and Cynthia is excited to know we have people like you still pushing for women from Ghana. It's great to see people connecting from all over the world. Well, wait, there's one comment here that's for me. It's Erica. It says, hello, João, I love you. That's my wife in Portugal. Babe, thank you for watching too. Sarah, now considering COVID-19, new technologies, the new consumer habits that are changing how we consume content, or fans' habits, what do you think are the main challenges or threats for sports?
Well, there are challenges, threats, but also through COVID-19, new technologies, new consumer habits, there are also many opportunities as well. And I'll just touch on both, if I may.
Okay.
And all of these elements, they've got threats and challenges. There are multiple demands on everyone's time, and in many cases, regrettably, a more sedentary lifestyle. New technologies have created a mobile social networking and gaming culture at the expense of active sport in many cases. And so I think these are threats and big challenges. But the opportunities are huge. They're vast. The developments during COVID-19 with, for example, online exercise programs, with coaching feedback tools, with embracing technology to benefit performance, with the way that the consumer can much more readily access sport from anywhere in the world and have a deeper dive into it as well, instead of just only on traditional television network platforms and find out more behind the scenes and things. So these things have actually also accelerated through COVID. I think one of the other threats of COVID is we've seen just how vulnerable we are as society, that there are many uncontrollables that we actually can't manage ourselves. So all of the best plans, all of the best strategies, with a situation like COVID that's happened, that we have to respond accordingly and absolutely follow the regulations. But it's made us more aware of the importance of our health, of taking care of it, of community spirit, of what that has done to everybody too. So whilst there have been some, of course, terrible tragedies connected with COVID, there have been lessons too that we must and are learning from it.
Great, great. I was going to ask you, what was the most important advice that you received in your professional career? However, well, we can keep that question, but Alessio Pietra phrased it quite nicely as well. What kind of advice would you have the 20-year-old Sarah would have liked to receive? So I don't know if you received that one, so maybe you want to tell us what was the main advice that's really helped in your career. And I'll borrow from Alessio here. Well, what would you advise the 20-year-old Sarah?
Well, I would say I didn't have a so-called watershed or light switch moment in terms of advice that I received over the years. And many, many different persons I've taken on board. They've contributed to the advice that I've embraced. And perhaps if there's one thing I would say, it's that you're never too experienced to learn. That's important. And I believe that you must be open-minded to listening, to receiving advice, and then to being able to evaluate it for yourself, and have the courage and conviction in your own abilities to do that in the right way. So that, I think, would be what I would hand over to people.
That's great advice. Never too old to learn.
What advice would I have given to myself as a 20-year-old? And well, I would say back then, remembering, please, Alessio, this is pre-internet times, so it's is a very, very different culture then. But it was a case of stick to your goals, work hard. The harder you work, the luckier you get. I would say that that's a phrase that sticks with me. And that basically means the fact is that working hard will really contribute to having successful outcomes. Okay. Certainly, nothing is presented to you on a plate. If you do not go out yourself and try to engage, to find opportunities, and to maximize these, and to look for what you can do to better yourself, what you can do to challenge yourself, be honest with yourself. These are very important tips that I would give. It is very unlikely that someone will just come to your door and say, would you like to have your dream job? You have got to go out and earn it, and you've got to work hard, however you can, in order to achieve it.
That's great. Sarah, so in your time as General Secretary, you must have hired so many people. What is it that you look for when you're hiring someone? In addition to the person, let's say, being able to do the job, okay? But is there any particular trait that you look for in someone whenever you're hiring?
Good. Well, we touched on this earlier as well, but I'll repeat it as well, that having demonstrating commitment and passion for the position, that the person has done research on the organization and on the position, that they are showing interest in what they can contribute for the position, that they are certainly rather inquisitive. They don't just want to hear what the position involves from a kind of a bureaucratic standpoint, what they're going to get out of it effectively, and the conditions. But it's about demonstrating that they are really passionate for the position. I'd like to make a special proviso for working in sport, which is that it isn't Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. That is very important to make clear. That sport is round the clock. It involves a lot of meetings and things that are outside so-called official working hours, because you're working with volunteers, or you could be working internationally. And at the moment, we have our Chinese teams who are both in China and in Europe, and then soon, from very soon, they'll be in North America as well. So that will really have me working round the clock. And
That's right.
Saturday, Sunday are big days for sport. They can be the main days. So as an athlete, you know it's about pursuing your objectives and your goals. And this is one of the reasons that athletes learn a lot of qualities for actually working within sport. And I would say that someone with a high-level sporting background and a clear commitment and a clear, education through sport will certainly benefit from this. And I see that as an attribute and a big box that gets ticked like any formal official qualification because of what it can bring.
Great. Listen, I'm just cognizant of the time here, so I do have just a couple of more questions about career, especially some advice for people starting their career now. Try to go fast over that. For anyone starting a career in sport now or wanting to start, where do you think the opportunities are at the moment? Is there any particular place that you would advise people to look at? And yes.
Yeah, I would say please don't limit where you intend to look, because sport is an incredibly broad industry, actually. It's not only about federations and national governing bodies or international ones, professional clubs, but there's a sporting goods industry, which is huge all over the world. And leisure wear has become basically daily wear. There's tourism, there's education as well. So it goes across so many parts of society that I think all of them, you should be open-minded to working in absolutely any of them, and don't limit yourself to your dream position at FIFA, for example.
That's good. Talking about education, and you mentioned the importance of don't not stop learning. When we talk about formal education and masters in sports, and uh, you mentioned that's an opportunity because it's growing within the sport industry as a sector. What's the real importance of that formal education for someone pursuing a career in sport?
Well, I think especially for somebody coming outside from outside sport, it's of particular value. Uh, let's call it a higher education. So after a formal education, because they will learn about the structures and about the organisation of sport as such, and when they're coming from another industry. But it's not the only way. So it's not a must, and certainly wasn't a must when I was responsible for hiring different persons at the International Ski Federation. And personally, I left my formal education when I was 15 after completing compulsory exams in London. Went to a ski academy where I had an excellent education, and I'm bilingue in French as a result, pretty much. And with 6 months there, I speak 4 languages, and I learnt extreme number of skills by actually learning by doing.
Yeah.
And this plenty of conferences, online seminars, and all sorts of multiple opportunities. But my formal education was on the sports field, and and also carrying out different positions.
All right. Sarah, thank you so much. We passed only 2 minutes, and I have one last question for you. Normally, I ask my guests to recommend a book to the audience, or a podcast, or a YouTube channel, or something like that. But normally, I ask for a book. Is there anyone in particular that you would like to recommend?
Well, I actually saw the question slightly differently, and I in fact was recommending a movie, and the movie is Invictus. It's about the
The
power
rugby.
of the Rugby World Cup, and basically the story that it sends about the power of sport in society. That is absolutely huge. The Rugby World Cup in South Africa in 2005. Rugby isn't my sport, but it was. My dad was a referee. But this movie is so meaningful with the role of Nelson Mandela handing over the trophy to. You couldn't write. You couldn't write it in real life, and so the movie was very appropriate, and it is real life. That's what's so special about it. So if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. And then the podcast. I'm an avid listener of podcasts, and I have been since basically they began. Actually, for years and years and years, I listen to them every day when I'm working out. Which, by the way, working out every day is also compulsory. So I listen to multiple different podcasts. Most were several about my football team, Arsenal London, and there's all sorts of fantastic, both entertaining and then a bit more serious ones. Depends on how things are going, of course. But one that's most relevant, I think, for this session that I listen to each edition and enjoy it very much, called Life Lessons from Sport and Beyond.
From Sport
So
and Beyond.
yes, do check it out, and I'll put it in the comments, or give it to you, Shao, to put in the
Okay.
comments. And it's an excellent podcast. Started out on the BBC, and now it's on its own channel. And I think that people will be very interested. So plug it in when you're working out, or you're having a walk, have some downtime. Do listen to it. Each episode is around an hour, and some fantastic guests.
Right. We'll post in the comments of the video after the session. Sarah, thank you so much. I want to thank everybody that is still here with us. And if you are still here with us and you're watching us on YouTube, if you want to hit that like button, if you like those kind of interviews, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well to get our notifications. Thank you so much, Sarah. I know that you have to travel now. It was a pleasure. It's funny, like we've met several times. Well, I see you always super busy when you're at the FIS exchange. Some words here and there, and for me, it was a great opportunity to learn more from you about your career. And as many pointed out in the comments, you're an inspiration. So thank you for doing this, and I look forward to keeping in touch. Good luck with the work in China, and I hope to see you soon.
Obrigado, my pleasure. Thank you so much. I wish to continue to be an inspiration to others, not just women. And I would like to thank everybody for their kind words. I'm very touched, but there's a long way to go. We've got a lot that we can contribute through sport, and I wish everybody every success at working in sport. We're in a privileged world.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.